We're all born different, with unique backgrounds, experiences, and cultures. These differences color the way we live, believe, and connect. But no one person can bring our diverse world together alone. It takes all of us.
Wait, all of us? Really? Can we all really get along?
Why not?
But we're all so different.
Exactly. That's what makes it so exciting. Come on, I'll show you more. It's true. Some think that being the same will keep us safe. But the truth is, every society has differences, and those differences are what help us grow. They bring new ideas, new stories. When we accept how different we all are, we can do even bigger and better things together.
But if we are all so different, how do we work together?
Well, it may seem tough, but if we look a little closer, it is not that difficult after all. Come, let's go. For many years, we have lived side by side, practicing different customs, and yet we have learned to share space, respect one another, and build a community. It's not just possible, it's already happening.
But how can people be different and still belong?
Do we really have to be the same to belong? Belonging isn't about fitting into one shape. It's about making space for many. Our society is layered with many cultures, stories, and ways of life. Each culture adds its own color and rhythm, and together they intertwine to create something beautiful.
Wow, that's so beautiful. How do we get other people to see that?
Well, it starts with you. Reach out and get to know someone. Come, let's go. It's easy to get swept up in the rush of daily life. But when we're brave enough to share and gracious enough to listen, even simple acts like waiting for a friend to finish their prayers become chances to connect. Understanding doesn't begin with grand gestures. It comes from the quiet, everyday ones.
It can start from something this small, but there's so many things. Where do I start?
Come, let me show you. By showing, not just telling, we can create real conversations, spark curiosity, and build a world where we understand each other more. We all have a voice. It's just a matter of how we use it. With our voices, we can help someone feel a little more understood, a little more connected.
Together,
We can forge cohesive societies
Then create resilient futures
That belong to us.
and for the generations to come.
A very, very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome one and all to Day 3 at the International Conference of Cohesive Societies 2025. Again, my name is Ravi, and with me is lovely Diana, and we're happy to be here with you on the final day of the conference.
That's right. And today, Ravi, have you noticed the average age of the audience here dropped because of our young leaders today? So welcome, young people. So ladies and gentlemen, on day 2 yesterday, we looked to the future and we looked at some of the challenges that could undermine multiculturalism and social cohesion. We kicked off the day with a fascinating keynote address by the Sultan of Perak and Deputy Yang di-Pertuan Agong, His Royal Highness Sultan Nazrin Shah. Now, the Sultan was especially poignant as he talked about the need for reinvention as well as resilience. And that will require collective courage. I like that. Collective courage as well as collaboration. When we moved on to the second plenary, we explored how technology and community engagement shape social cohesion. Singapore's Mr. Peter Ho talked about the social media's power to connect as well as divide, and that poses challenges for policy as well as misinformation. From the Netherlands, Mr. Ahmad Abu Talib stressed the importance of building cohesion on the ground through direct engagement and shared solutions. And finally, Mr. Fadi Chahadi called for culturally inclusive digital governance, urging tech platforms to let local communities shape digital norms. I'm sure some of us are still thinking about the billions of agents he talked about. Yeah. And then we also had some of the results from the 2025 Southeast Asian Social Cohesion Radar that gave us a quick look at the attitudes and perceptions of Southeast Asians towards social cohesion. In the afternoon, with the respective breakouts and workshops, we looked at topics such as fostering resilient digital ecosystems for multicultural societies, unpacking the concept of new cultural and tribal identities and the notion of extremism and polarization and how we might combat such divisive forces as one people.
We did quite a lot yesterday. And just a one-liner to recap the 3 days, ladies and gentlemen. Day 1, we actually looked at historical forces that shaped and mapped multiculturalism. Day 2, we gazed into the future and to understand and to analyze challenging uncertainties that lie ahead of us. And today, it's all about strong societal resilience. Today, we shift our focus to strong societal resilience. And of course, that is so important to create strong communities and to prepare ourselves for what lies ahead. Today's discussions are indeed going to be very insightful, and I'm sure you will enjoy the discussions that come through. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is the topic of discussion for the first plenary session, Forging Societal Resilience. It is with pleasure that I now introduce our panelists. We have Mr. Dinesh Vasudash, Minister of State, Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, Singapore. Mr. Ho Kwong Ping, Founder and Executive Chairman, Banyan Group. Venerable Napan Tawan Banjop, Founding Chair of Institute of Buddhist Management for Happiness and Peace Foundation, Secretary General of Religions for Peace. Moderating this session, ladies and gentlemen, we have Professor Mona Siddiqui, Professor of Islamic and Interreligious Studies and Assistant Principal for Religion and Society, University of Edinburgh.
Let's welcome our moderator as well as our panelists up on stage. Warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And now that's the QR code for you to scan for the Q&A session later on. Feel free to do so now, although our moderator will flash it up again when it's time for Q&A. Welcome all to the stage. Looks like we're all set. And Prof, over to you, please.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, MCs. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. It's great to be back in Singapore for this ICCS conference, and my thanks to RSIS for the invitation and all the organization. The theme today is resilience, and I'm delighted to be chairing this plenary with my esteemed guests, who I will introduce shortly. But let me start this session with a few thoughts of my own. Over the last 2 days, we've heard much on the topic of social cohesion against a background of social media, AI, the challenges of multiculturalism, and the recognition of global uncertainties. But all this leads to the significance of today's topic, resilience, about which yesterday Sultan Nazreen said, resilience is more than survival, it's having a vision. Which makes me think that resilience is really a state of mind, an attitude to life that is a personal as well as a political endeavor. It isn't universally acknowledged as a cardinal virtue, but when it's seen as fortitude, it is, I think, essential to growth, because it means accepting and responding to new realities, whether they be good or bad. It's not simply enthusiasm, it's endurance, having courage to give yourself and your country another chance. Last year, Singapore was ranked the world's 6th most resilient city in real estate consultancy, Savills Annual Global Index. And in a global resilience index by insurance firm FM Global, Singapore was ranked 3rd most resilient in the world, bolstered by its strength in logistics, urbanization, political risk, and productivity. But this part of the world is not without its challenges, and I would like my panel to deconstruct why resilience matters. Resilience is powerful, but it isn't always virtuous or healthy. It can perpetuate harm, normalize injustice in all kinds of relationships, make people endure rather than change systemic structural issues, including poverty, inequality, and other kinds of marginalizations. Resilience can also mean you suppress your emotions and conversations, and sometimes what is needed is resistance, not resilience, reform, not endurance, rest and recovery, not constant adaptation. So for me, resilience as essential to social cohesion is complex, and I'm hoping that my panel will be able to enlighten me. So let me introduce my first guest, Mr. Dinesh Vasudhaj, Minister of State, Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, and Ministry of Manpower, who will speak on Singapore's policy approaches to cohesion. And just before I ask him to come onto the stage, I would like to say that each of our speakers will have between 7 and 10 minutes to do their presentation, after which there will be Q&A and a conversation amongst ourselves as well. And I am hoping that we can get through as many questions today as possible, but also give this whole panel this morning a conversational tone. So thank you very much, and please welcome me in addressing the first speaker.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow panelists, Mr. Ho, Venerable Napan Tawan Banjop, Professor Mona Siddiqui, friends from around the world. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to be here to speak to every one of you. And the intention for me really is to just highlight Singapore's blend of forging societal resilience and how we went about doing so over the last 60 years. The journey for us started really with bloodshed, divisiveness, and helplessness when we were trusted with independence almost 60 years ago. Fast forward to where we are today, we have moved from a notion of helplessness based on the guidance given by our first Prime Minister on building a country that is not a Chinese country, not a Malay country, nor an Indian country, but a Singaporean country. And hence, the building blocks were placed very early on in terms of our policy direction and to ensure that we've had a multicultural society moving forward. I'd like to also add that in our schools today, our students take the pledge, the national pledge, which forges one Singapore regardless of race, language, or religion. Now, this is important for us because at the end of the day, we are a blend of multiple cultures, ethnicities, religions. And the social glue that keeps us together and to build societal resilience is really a forged sense of solidarity. But this was really built on three main pillars that the government has put in place over the last couple of years. The first is really somewhat policy, structures, the hardware, if you may. Now, the way we have done it over the years was to create the integration of society in our ethnic integration policy, a rather intrusive housing policy that we've had, where each housing development board flat or the public housing would have to mirror the national profile as far as our races are concerned. So that was one particular way where you are forced to see each other daily, either in the lifts or underneath the blocks, and therefore integration takes place by way of proximity. Second, we moved towards English as the lingua franca for Singapore, where we were able to then use it as our language for communication and business, but at the same time maintaining a second language that's based on our respective ethnicities. In this way, once again, a nice mix between being able to communicate with one another, but at the same time maintaining our cultural roots. And thirdly, our national service policy, particularly for our men among us above the age of 18, a compulsory 2 years of national service where they would be deployed to either the army, police, or civil defense force. And once again, somewhat less explained usually, but this is a very important way where at least the male population of Singapore are banded together and are expected to take on tasks for the nation by way of national service. I would like to just add that from a personal perspective, having served in the armed forces for many years, I must say I've been able to observe the integration that happens at a very organic level between our various soldiers, regardless of race, language, or religion. In fact, my son will be enlisting for national service next year, and next week. I think I've been in this job for, slightly longer than I expected. It's messing up my brain. Next week, he's getting enlisted, and he's actually looking forward to it. Just a short couple of years ago, some of our people would do things to themselves in order to get what we call being downgraded to do other parts of slightly lesser onerous combat roles and so forth. So again, national service has been a very important social glue that stitches all of us together. And for me personally, I've been able to see Chinese, Indians, and Malays being deployed to far-flung areas. In my case, we were deployed to Afghanistan for a couple of months, and all of us were together, and we were brothers, doing what we need to do and flying our flags high. But it's not just about top-down measures alone, but also bottom-up. And here, there's much support that the government gives towards self-help groups. These are really bottom-up initiatives where certain races may come together to say, well, I need to have self-help groups for the purpose of educational upliftment, for example. And for this particular category, there have been specific agencies that have been put in place, including Mendaki for the Malays to uplift education. Similarly, CDAC and SINDA, or the Singapore Indian Development Association. Again, these are very much grounded by the respective races in which they would look at ways at which they could uplift their particular community and to be able to do specific targeted policy interventions and initiatives that are related to the respective racial groups. This has yielded us tremendous benefits. I have been a volunteer of the Singapore Indian Development Agency, or SINDA, and SINDA has not only moved as much as it can from the educational angle, but it has also moved towards upliftment as far as social norms and to help those who are less privileged within society. The third principle is really building bridges across communities. So it's not just top-down hardware, bottom-up, a bit of hardware, but we're looking at building bridges across society, really the software, the glue that holds us all together. And here I'm very proud to add that there are several agencies that has been formed, pretty much ground up too. For example, the Harmony Circles. Many of you here are from the Harmony Circles. The interreligious organizations where the ability for us to bring together not just racial groups, but also religious groups to be able to forge societal cohesion and to be able to understand one another and to be able to help one another at times of need. Not too long ago, in November 2024, we had an unfortunate situation in one of our churches where one of the congregants, unfortunately, he had a bit of a mental issue, stabbed the pastor. It was identified that it wasn't terrorist related, but nonetheless, members of the Christian, Muslim, and Hindu communities came together with our Sikh community and Buddhist brothers and sisters. We came together and organically came up with a statement of support to our Christian brothers at the time of need. Now, this might just be a small little example of testing our social resilience, but all of this happened without any form of government intervention, and it happened organically. And I think we are all very happy and heartened that such actions are indeed taking place to stitch us together as part of this social glue that we call Singapore. I'd just like to add that the journey that we have had is only 60 years old. We are a country of 60 years of heritage as an independent nation. We celebrate what's called SG60 this year, where we celebrate all that we have done over the last 60 years to bring us to where we are. A proud and cohesive society. The statistics seems to be quite encouraging as well, where again, in the theme of 60% of our people believe that personal connections with other religions are indeed important, and this was identified by a Pew study that was conducted in 2022. And in 2023, the same study indicated that 82% felt that having connected with their religion is as important as being connected to the national culture, which I think are all very encouraging signs for a very young nation, a very small nation with quite a bit of a way left to go. However, we don't rest on our laurels, and we, for one, do not believe that we have arrived. We are indeed a work in progress. We continue to believe that more needs to be done, not just at the intra-state level, but the interstate level as well. And conferences like this is a very important reminder for us that we need to extend our knowledge, connections, and networks to the world, and not just to remain in Singapore alone. I do believe we need to do more. State has to do more, and so too does the need for businesses, as well as civil society, our religious organizations especially, to come forward, to move towards one where we are not just tightly banded together, but we are closely blended with one another. And I think that's still a work in progress, and hopefully over time we will get there. For some of us who may be struggling with the heat in Singapore, perhaps one way to look at it is to consider ourselves at some stage down the future where we will end up becoming like ice-blended coffee, where you have ice and coffee that are, mixed with one another, where you can't quite separate the ice cubes from the coffee. Or better still, there's another drink that I like very much, which is called the yin yang, which is a combination of tea and coffee, and perhaps a blend of that too. So you have a triple blend going on. And that is what we should be aiming towards in Singapore at some point in time. Perhaps not the ice-blended yin yang yet, but at least we start off with a nice cup of ice-blended coffee, and perhaps that would be one way we start the journey in the days forward as we move towards Singapore 60 years from now and even longer. Thank you very much. Was I on time? Sorry. Thank you.
Our second speaker is Mr. Ho Kwon Ping, founder and executive chairman of Banyan Tree Holdings. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. Like Minister, I'm also a very proud ex-national serviceman. I've retired long ago as having done my national service. I've got two sons who've done national service. In fact, I found it was socially so cohesive that I actually advocated publicly that women should do this. And then I was disabused of this notion when I was shown a survey where 97% of the women who were surveyed said they thought it was good that women should do national service. But when the question was posed as to would you, as a woman, like yourself or your daughter to do national service, 5% said yes. So we have a long way to go to get women to enjoy social cohesion under national service. I don't have any prepared text. I just have 3 short points that I thought I'd like to make to provoke some discussion. I think as all of us who are Singaporeans and those who know Singapore well, we can really say that Singapore is a shining example of success in terms of really achieving, particularly in this totally fractious world today. Singapore is a shining success story of multiculturalism. But where can we do better? I would say that we have been very successful in what I would call institutional multiculturalism. The examples that Minister made are largely set by the pioneer generation and our pioneer leaders to set in place institutions and institutional requirements, which, as Minister also alluded to, enforce multiculturalism in a society which, when we were first born as a nation, was not naturally multicultural and cohesive. And it has been largely very successful in terms of English as a language, in terms of our 4 official languages, in terms of HDB rules and so on. But my concern is we go into the next generations is that it becomes an institutionalized multiculturalism and no longer a dynamic interculturalism. I think there's a difference between multiculturalism, which we have achieved, and interculturalism, where the different cultures and the races dynamically integrate with each other beyond what government has done. I think government has done a fantastic job, but there is only that much that government can do. And we are now in a new generation where people do not resist the multiculturalism as they used to when Singapore was first born. But everybody now in Singapore accepts the multiculturalism that we have, which is excellent. But are we doing enough to promote greater cohesion between the races, between the religions, between minorities and the majority race and so on? And that cannot be the role of government. You do not want government to intrude that much into your life. We spend most of our lives in the workplace, but how much are businesses truly promoting interculturalism? And I speak to you as a businessman. And just as an example for ourselves, Banyan Tree is not a big organization, but we are incredibly diverse. We have about 15,000 associates only, but we have 96 nationalities spread across 25 countries. And so we cannot promote interculturalism by physical interactions within people, but we go out of our way. Now that Zoom has become so prevalent, we have so many Zoom town halls, we have so many Zoom meetings where we form task forces specifically by individuals who are very far from each other physically, who are of different races and different religions, and these task forces have to make presentations to the larger whole and so on. We also have physical task forces where we send groups of people in the opening of a new hotel. We go out of our way not to put task forces that are just there because of their different skills, but because of their different cultural, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. So that's just one example of what we are trying to do. We are just a small company, but I really would urge employers and businesses to recognize that the role of promoting interculturalism is not just with the schools and not just with the military, and it's not just with the government. It has to be at the workplace, and it has to be promoted very dynamically. The second point I'd like to make is that I think we all recognize that the dangers that exist with racial divisions and religious divisions. But I would put it to you, and particularly in the US today, and even in Singapore when I read about a recent survey, that in fact social cohesion due to income inequalities is also growing. There is not sufficient awareness that class is a dividing factor. And when people talk about class, they generally think one shouldn't because it seems that you begin to have a Marxist bent. But any sociologist would tell you, or economist would tell you, class differentiation is a very alive and very strong source of social division. And I think we need to recognize that. In Singapore today, I would have to say that the egalitarianism which pervaded Singapore culture during our initial pioneer years, and I'm 73 years old, so I am coming from that generation, that sense of egalitarianism today is a lot less than it was before. And egalitarianism is not equality, but it is egalitarianism is a cultural attribute. Singaporeans in the past who had money would be shy to flaunt their wealth. Young tycoons in Singapore today go out of their way to flaunt their wealth. Now that is not a good sign. I don't think any of us believe in a communist society where everyone has equal wealth and equal income, but we must be a society that does not promote the flaunting of that social divisiveness. And I fear that that's an issue that is not sufficiently tackled. The final point I'd like to make is that as a business person, I have been totally ashamed by my counterparts in a society which we were taught, unfortunately, to admire, the United States of America. In all the business conferences I go to, not like this one, the big leaders, the paragons of virtue and achievement, all the big American business leaders, the big multinational leaders, the big private equity fund leaders. But when Donald Trump decided to kill DEI, they just all quietly dropped it. And I think they dropped it enthusiastically, which goes to show that they never believed it in the first place. And my point here is that government in Singapore has done an incredible job of promoting multiculturalism, but ultimately, what if there is a change of government one day? And not that I'm promoting that, sir, at all, but you've seen what happened in America, you've seen elsewhere. My point is that in a civil society, it is the responsibility of all of us to adhere to the values that we believe. We are fortunate to have a government today that has taken the onus of having to have deep-seated values, taken it out of our responsibility because government believes it in so much. But one day, if this does not exist anymore, how many businesses in Singapore will still promote multiculturalism, would still promote DEI, or will they go the way of all the American businesses and happily drop it with an excuse that government is forcing them to drop it? So this is actually a call out to all my other business colleagues, whom I think many are not attending this conference, but I think the responsibility of businesses to have values that they truly believe in is a responsibility that has been shirked, and I think is a responsibility that they must undertake, because if we believe that business is a driver of social change, then business leaders must speak up for what they believe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our third speaker is Venerable Napan Thawar. I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, so excuse me. Thawaran Banjob, Founding Chair of Institute of Buddhist Management for Happiness and Peace Foundation. Please.
Good morning to you all, my distinguished participants and my beloved panelists. And may I begin with, bear with me. Actually, bear with me, not just this small bear with me, but also the one of the very important qualifications for forging societal resilience. And this, not just bear with me, but his name is Echo. He was made by hand and by heart of our volunteer at IBHAF Foundation. So one of the message is just like, religious leader not center anymore. We can use audience-generated strategy, and this is the result of that. And also the echo itself, it's related to what the Buddha taught about what we define by our Kamma, what we think, what we communicate, what we do. That's all three Kamma. So hopefully that you're going to destroy echo as well, but not this echo, but it's echo chamber. It's very important, not just only stay in the echo chamber. So because my English is not that good, I'm Thai, and I hope that I can speak Thai on the stage with Mr. Ho. But if that happened, the problem would be yours, right? So bear with me again. So I'm gonna need my presentation, and because of the SG60, I prepare 60 slides. So bear with me.
You have 8 minutes.
Yes, I definitely understand it. Okay, so this is a formal inner piece to social harmony, a Buddhist monk journey toward cohesive society. It means I don't share anything, just only my own reflection. So that's Kammunawati logo. It means this world driven by Kamma. And Kamma, it means bodily, verbal, and mental action. So if we begin by transforming our minds, the way we think, we can change the way we talk and the way we do. And doing so, we have the power to transform the world. And this is the essence of butterfly effect. And if faith-based organization, FBO, work more effectively, maybe organization like FBI don't need to work hard anymore. And that's why I drive Buddhism for SDG with our volunteer at IBHAP Foundation. I'm going to read, I'm not going to read it, but please, this is please remember, I'll be happy, I be happy. And that's our core value, especially the last one, pluralistic and peace-oriented. And this is the way we would like to do. We would like to drive Buddhism for SDG from global, regional, national to local, and in the way around, two ways. Because so many things like this bag, you can see this is made by our volunteer as well with their social business called More Loop. So it's a circular economy. It resonates with the concept of rope that monks recycle the clothes that people throw away. So 5P of UN, you can see people, prosperity, planet, peace and partnership, and I add more extra P with UN love, pra, it means monk. So 30,100 monks in the Thailand can be change agent for SDG. And I'm not talking about Buddhism and monks, but all religion. And even non-believer can help for this. So I'm going to go through this. Just show one picture worth 1,000 words. So this is an example of what we do. And even with the Hermawan, the second author of Marketing Through Point Zero from Indonesia. So he invited me to join the Asian Marketing Summit because he sees that business will drive this world. Business side drive this world. So if they're more mindful, the world would be the better place to live. And this is peace. You can see a lot of interfaith dialogue and everything, partnership, not just only religious institution, government, intergovernmental, all of that and this part. And my journey began with family. I am who I am because of my mom. And you can see my brother also was ordained. I was ordained when I was 11, and then I was sent away to get education in the countryside. I was born in Bangkok, but because my mother sent away to countryside, that's why I know Buddhism, very important social capital in Thailand. Which if I grew up in Bangkok only, I don't know that. And that's my master, and I learned almost 2 years with the most venerable PA Piyutto at Wat Yan Resigawan. That changed my life. So another, first one is family, the second one, education, both formal and informal. And because of that, we founded the Butterfly Group of volunteer monks and integrated group counseling with the Dhamma-based training. We did that for almost a decade, and then I got a chance to get education in higher diploma program on promotion peaceful society, and that General Ekachai Sivilat transformed my life because that's the first cohort. I learned a lot from that program, and 1 year later, I got a chance to provide a training in the Deep South, and because of that program, I have connections with their security, with soldier, and with anyone. You can see that grandmother said that she never laughed for almost 10 years after the conflict happened in the Deep South. And also the Insider Peace Builder platform that they saw that I work well with the project in the southern border of Thailand, so Norbert, so he invited me to join that. And this IPP still work right now. And also the one who changed my life, Martin Miller from the Network for Religious and Children Peacemaker. So that, the first time I met her, and then she brought me into the world of Peace Builder. And we friends since then. She's like my big sister. And I barely spoke English at that time. I understood just only 50%. But she sent me anyway. She encouraged me to go everywhere. And I learned early warning. And that's why I stood up on the television and tell that let the bomb destroy just only bodies of Buddhist monks, not the heart of Buddhism. Because if we didn't send this early warning, Buddhists who are minority in the Deep South, maybe they feel too much. And another Kalyana or good friends, Kaisit, I applied in 2018, and because of that, I worked on interfaith dialogue. And then I met Maruf, the one on my right-hand side, and also Kun Ke, the co-founder of COFAC. And because of that, we work on Digital Thinker Forum because of the COFAC Thailand. And then this is the example that Digital Thinker Forum spread. This is Kun Jan, also from HD Center, who also Kalyana Mitt, and this is Jan Sawani. So this is the example that we want you to see that actually when we receive Kalyana Mitt or good friends, we can be another one good friends. And this is other. Now, we worked with them 10 years ago. Now, one of them become National Human Rights Commission. One is second to the top of the Catholic Council. And this is Meru. I met him, and then I know that he was running Peace Innovation. I went there and asked his permission, can I join? And I'm going to support myself and also support the camp as well. And I asked him that, please, because Buddhist matter here, please approach them. And in national level, I'm going to help him. So then KPI, we also brought the ICRC to work with the online project. And because of the media, you can see that a lot of audience when we were on national television, used the way edutainment, education plus entertainment, we reach out more than it is. And then with Thailand Talk, with F&F Foundation, for example, we create a tremendous number of viewers. You can see like almost 3,100 viewers. Talk about how we're going to talk together, even we have different opinion on many things. And this is since then. And this is the three organizations that support me to work this way. And this is Dialogue City that Kaisit trusts us to make it happen. And all these I would like to share, even we want to do it like online. And this is what Maruf said, that the way that he came to join us at the temple didn't increase his Muslimhood at all, same as mine when I went to the Deep South. And this is the way that we approach all the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security. And congratulations, 10 years of Kaisit Dialogue. And this is also Religion for Peace, Professor Supat Med also here. And last one, National Human Rights Commission of Thailand, which I applied for be their student and then work with them. And now I'm kind of their advisor, Human Rights for Healer Monk last year. And just last week, we went to help with the people who suffer. And this is what the Buddhist minority say, no more violence. So in conclusion, I think this is from my journey. If we want to work toward cohesive society, this is what we need. cohesive society begins with your family, and then you need our support that you can see. And last but not least, when Titanic was sinking, there were 3 ships, around that it could have come to save life, but just only one came. In our real life, among the sea of hatred that we're going to die, there are 3 ships that we can save our life and this society. The first one, relationship. Whoever you know, just try to do that. I have Maroof as a Muslim brother. I have Mateen like a mentor. What about you? Use your leadership to make it happen, cohesive society, and don't do it in a power over way. Do it as a friendship. And one thing that I would like to add is like partnership. Make it last longer. So it means next time ICCS should invite me, right? So at the end, I would like to end with 3 ups. It's just like we need to stand up, like I'm standing up right now, and speak up for the right thing. Send early warning, even you're gonna get mad, but do it because cohesive society is more important. And last but not least, time's up for me right now. And Professor Mona tried to look at me right now. So time's up for me right now, and so time's up for just a re-engagement. No more religious leader engagement, no more youth engagement. Let's get married. As a Buddhist monk, I cannot get married, but you know what I mean. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for your humor, for your wisdom, and also for sticking to time. Thank you very much.
Very engaging.
Thank you. So I want to ask a couple of questions that have occurred to me as our speakers were speaking. And I do want to touch a little bit on some of the tensions that have kept up. We've heard a lot about the success of Singapore, and I don't deny that for a moment. But I do think 1 or 2 things that have been said today have made me think about where do some of the tensions lie. One of the questions we have is really about what does cohesion, we assume that we know what cohesion means, but it can mean very different things at government level and at grassroots level, even at a religious level. So you said, Mr. Ho, that multiculturalism is a policy, but it should also be seen as a virtue or a value. And I wondered if you could just say a little bit more about that. Because sometimes even when we're talking about interreligious dialogue or interfaith, we're sort of preaching to the converted. It's the same people who show up. It's the same people who promote. Why doesn't everybody see it as a virtue then? Mr. Ho.
Why doesn't everyone see it
as a virtue? Yeah.
I think we see it as a virtue more nominally. And here's a concept that I'd like to put forward, that perhaps multiculturalism is more embraced by those who would not benefit if it were not there. That means our minorities, whether they be ethnic or religious, tend to value multiculturalism more, but the majority religion and the majority race just pays lip service to it. I'm quite well aware of that because there was quite a bit of noise in the Chinese community when some minorities talked about the majority privilege. The idea that there is no racism, overt racism by the Chinese towards Indians and Malays, but there is clearly a sense of majority privilege. And I, as a Chinese, am well aware that that exists, because I've lived and worked in societies where I am a minority. And it extends to even little things where in a different culture, I may not be speaking the language of that culture, but people would have a dinner party and they all just talk amongst each other as if I don't exist. And they would just politely say, oh, excuse me, we're just talking this language. I think many of our minorities here would know that when they go to a dinner party with their friends, in the army, for example, when they get all together, they'll speak Hokkien. And if you don't speak Hokkien, well, you're out of it. I happen to be a non-Hokkien speaking Chinese, so even when I was in the army, I was well aware of that. So my point is that I think multiculturalism must be a value also that we deeply believe in, whereas a virtue seems to imply that it's something that we think is nice and good, but we don't need to have it deeply embraced by us. And I think the majority race, the majority culture, has the onus of responsibility to promote true interculturalism and not just abide by multiracialism. When you abide by multiracialism, it means that I don't really have to get to know your society, I don't need to know your community or your religion, I just need to make sure that I will not take advantage of you and I let you live and coexist. I'll coexist with you. But I guess my point is coexistence is not the same as deeply merging with each other. And I think if you look at what's happening in the West today, a society which incidentally is racially and religiously, I'm talking obviously about Europe and America, racially and religiously more cohesive than we are in Singapore, and then more than we are in Asia. They're mainly Christian, they're mainly whites, and look at how incredibly divided they are today. So social cohesion cannot be taken for granted. Our government knows it, and I'm sure to Minister's frustration, government has been pounding this point for the last 50 years, but it's time for Singaporeans in business and elsewhere to take up that mantle of responsibility. And my fear is that we're just letting government do all the job. Conferences like this, government is to set it up, but we in business, we don't really have to worry about it. Government's doing it all already.
But if I can just extend that, Mr. Dinesh, you talked about the West being divided, and there's division in every society, whether it's top-down or grassroots. Some people may not want anything more than coexistence. They don't want, why do I have to be friends with people? I can get along with them, I can coexist with them, I can treat them with respect in my places of work. What you're asking for is something more which demands more of our interior world, like we should, and this goes to your point as well about seeking friendships, seeking relationships. What is that added value? How do you make that into an added value? That coexistence is not enough. You need to actually forge meaningful relationships.
Well, from Singapore's perspective, if you look at our history and our geography, I think that gives us a clear reason why we should be united and as cohesive as we can be, because we are indeed a tiny island. We have no hinterland, and at the end of the day, we've had a shared history over the last couple of years, at least over the last 60 years from the time of independence. Naturally, there will be many forces that will pull us apart, perhaps now more than ever, given what's happening in the West, given the prevalence of social media, and therefore we should double up our efforts. I fully agree with Mr. Ho that it should be not only one that's government-led, but one that our civilian and civil society takes on board as well, be it businesses, be it religious organizations, and I think that has been coming a bit more to the fore. Why is cohesion important? We are a small place. Are we there yet? I think there are some initial signs that we have developed ourselves into somewhat semi-blended, I'd say, not fully blended yet, but we do have divisive forces within. Race, religion, language, culture is something that's very deeply rooted, and that can be triggered if it's not carefully managed. However, I must say that over the years there have been decent and positive signs. Whenever we go overseas, for many of us, we come back thinking of our food. For me personally, when the moment I come back, I try to run for my mee siam or nasi lemak or prata, and that goes beyond just my cultural cuisines, but also that of other cultures. This is probably the only place, this region, not only Singapore to be fair, where you would see a Chinese person who would actually enjoy Indian curry, and Indians who would enjoy Chinese food, Japanese food.
Oh, I can tell you lots of Westerners enjoy Indian curry.
That's thanks to the good work of our British predecessors. But if you take a page of India, for example, you'd never think of Chinese food as, of course, it's getting better now, as compared to what we see here. Something that is deeply rooted. We celebrate each other's festivals. My family is a strange example in that, where you'd see many of us gathering on the eve of Chinese New Year, usually, not because I've got relatives or friends or family who, I've got lots of relatives and friends who are Chinese, but my immediate family are all Indians. But we'd gather on the eve of Chinese New Year, usually because it's my son's birthday, and you'll have this motley crew of Indian people with the lo hei and trying to figure out what needs to be said and so on. I think we have transcended beyond monolithic cultures into trying to blend towards something that's useful and something that's a bit more cohesive as we should be. But are we there yet? The answer is no. But we've certainly passed the point of coexistence.
Thank you. I want to ask you, beyond this, a lot of societies will celebrate people's cultures and celebrations and festivals. They'll come together. Even in the West now, prime ministers give out messages of Eid and Diwali, etc. And those are symbolic, they're important. But you're talking about something more than that. You're talking about the next step, which is where you actually forge relationships between people that are long-lasting and maybe intergenerational. What is a resistance to that, do you think? Is there a resistance to that?
Sorry?
Is there a resistance? Why doesn't everyone believe that that is a value in itself?
I think I just also talked with Mr. Ho that actually, like for example, Thailand has a very great mechanism to prevent conflict in the culture. Like Buddhism is very social, very important social capital, but that's in the past. But right now, outer factors, a lot of them, break us. So because of that, we need to have both preventive approach and responsive approach. I think if we just do what we used to do, it's not enough anymore. I noticed myself, like for example, when any time that incident happened in the southern border of Thailand, hate speech that spread around. Now people believe in that more and more. But think about this: peace builder have annual meeting, ICCS once a year, but people who spread hate speech, they did it every minute. So if we want to win this war, we need to adjust our way of thinking, our way of communication, and our way of action, and especially the collaboration. I say this because I also grew up in the Buddhist family, but my parents kind of cultivate open-mindedness to my mind. And because of that, because of the program in the King Prasatipok Institute, I got a chance to engage with Muslim leader, Muslim media, and also Muslim politician. That's the first time. And that time I almost 30 years. So think about it. If we don't know that, if we don't learn that, think about, I'm not sure, like Buddhists in Thailand, when they receive the message from the Queen or the King of the UK about the Vesak, they're happy. So I think the same with the other faith, brother and sister. Why don't we do that? And not just only do that. In Thailand right now, the Institute of Wasatiyah for Peace and Development of Sheikhul Islam, during Ramadan, they do it more actively, approach monks and temple and offer the date palm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we know more for each other. And like Mr. Ho said, majority should do more. Yeah.
Your general, earlier, you seem to be thinking, you asked a number of questions about why people seem to believe in social cohesion but don't really practice it. That was what
I think people, sometimes when you talk about social cohesion, you're kind of preaching to the converted. People already want to be committed to that. And if it's such a big value, why aren't more people committed to it?
I was going to say, I think this is partly because one part of ourselves believe in good things, but there is the fear of the unknown. The more of what we do not know and we then befriend as a person or know about that culture, the less we have that generic fear of the unknown. And I'm not trying to plug tourism here, okay? Because I come from that sector. But generally, without plugging any particular places, I have been quite unhappy about the fact that young Singaporeans, whenever they were able to travel, they would love to go to New York, Paris, they wanted immediately to go to Europe. How many young Singaporeans know about the incredible places in Indonesia? They do not know. Thankfully, because people do not want to go to the United States now, and Mr. Trump doesn't welcome them, we're getting a lot more people asking us, can they come to visit our resorts in Indonesia? So I'm not plugging Banyan Tree in Indonesia. But what I am saying...
But you are. But that's good.
No, there are many other hotels. There are 10,000 other hotels. But what I am saying seriously, particularly for young Singaporeans, and I think you would agree, right? Young Singaporeans know more about Western culture, Western soft power, Western movie stars, Western everything, than about our neighbors. And that's something that can be improved by young people traveling more, not to our resorts, but by traveling more within the region and going out of their way to understand cultures and people they would not immediately understand because they may not that many Singaporeans would speak Indonesian, not many Thais would speak Indonesian, for example, or Indonesians speak Thai. So more interaction among young people disperses that fear of the unknown.
So that's an interesting point, because some people would argue that actually, I do know your culture, I do know your people, I don't want to know you anymore. Okay? It's not about not knowing, it's about knowing and then retreating. But from what you're saying, and I think we see this in a lot in the Global South, that a marker of prosperity and wealth is that you are more interested in the Global North, that you go to the Global North, that you have friends in the Global North. And it leads me to a question that how much does social cohesion, we have a lot of questions about grassroots social cohesion, government social cohesion, whose responsibility is it? But how much do external conflicts, at the moment, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza, and now Iran, how much does external conflict that is beamed into, all radio stations, all TV stations, affect social cohesion? Minister.
Well, I think we can't shy away from the fact that information is pervasive, it's available, and everybody looks at it from their cultural lens. But it's important to take a national view as well. And I think here's where it's important to understand what our interests may be, what does it mean to a small country like Singapore, and what does it mean for cohesion in general. Naturally, there will be factors that will want us to be sympathetic, understand, and I think that's perfectly fair and normal. But it would always be based upon how do we then prevent that from happening here? What do we need to do to further strengthen our bonds? So it's about taking that perspective and to convert it to something that's local. Unfortunately, it's not always possible with social media that tends to, kind of bombard you with a certain point of view, and that tends to shape mindsets. So
let me ask you more concretely, if people want to go on marches here, pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, pro-Iran, pro-whatever, would that be possible?
Well, our position for certain marches and so forth is one where we believe that conferences like this, interfaith dialogues, are what's more useful and concrete to understanding and appreciating different points of view culturally and from a religious angle, rather than to go out and to make a big scene out of it. And when we have more of those happening, conversations that are meaningful, ways at which we can understand one another, and for that to then spread to the rest of the community, that we feel is more useful. It's a very Singaporean way of doing work, where things are always done kind of behind the scenes, under the radar, but we understand one another. We try to do something that's tangible to support, rather than to bang the table and make a big scene out of it. It's very much cultural, and that has evolved into a Singaporean way of managing difficult situations that we see across the world.
I understand. Venerable, do you want to add anything to that? In your world of interfaith and interreligious dialogue, have you seen any changes to how people are coming together in recent months?
I think interfaith dialogue, interreligious dialogue, is kind of the very effective mechanism that help people. Actually, even not the formal one. I truly believe, you can see from my presentation, that we use group counseling So later on, when I learned interfaith dialogue from Kaisit, like more seriously, we know that actually we sit in a circle to break the vicious circle. Because of that, we open our heart to open the actual space, and we open the actual space like this. Then we can open our heart when we listen to something that maybe we never know before. And the last one is like, because of the social media, right now we need to open the virtual space to open the space of heart and the actual space. So I think we need more systematically and synergistically way of doing it. I'm not sure I can talk about the way that Thai government doesn't support interfaith dialogue that much.
You can say whatever you want.
This is safe space, right?
This is very safe space. No one is
I'm
listening.
not safe when I back.
No one is listening. You just say what you want to say.
But I think I need to say this. I think we need to admit first that we don't focus that much in Thailand, maybe because people pay attention to political conflict. But you know what? They try to combine political conflict with the religious one and then divide people more, especially in the Deep South and somewhere else. So we need to do it. And you can see, even right now, I know the leadership of the Sheikhul Islam, know many father and sister and many different faith and even policymaker. But when we talk about the effective mechanism to collaborate when something happens or to prevent something from happening, we don't have that yet. I hope that ICCS going to help me. RSIS, help me, please.
Thank you. We have a question for Mr. Chang for Mr. Ho. You spoke passionately about the role of businesses in upholding and uplifting multiculturalism. Other than regulation, how can grassroots leaders and civil society ensure businesses are held accountable to their responsibility of forging multicultural as well as intercultural ties?
How can civil society hold businesses accountable? I think the issue of holding companies accountable is one side of the picture, whether it be for sustainability, for DEI, multiculturalism, and so on. But that presupposes that companies themselves do not want to be held accountable. I guess where I'm coming from is I believe there need to be these external forces that do hold companies accountable for whatever they say they're going to do, whether it be DEI or even profitability or corporate governance and so on. But I do not want to start from a position as a business person as if businesses are inherently culprits that need external regulation. I obviously believe in that, and governments have to do that. But I guess from my point of view, it should start from within. Why are businesses themselves requiring so much accountability? Now, governments need accountability also with elections and so on, and so do companies too, with AGMs, etc. But I'm sure for a minister, within the PAP, you start out thinking not about the electorate holding you accountable, and therefore you need to do certain things. You start from a position of what is it that you deeply believe in and you want to do. And I think what I am saying is that companies themselves, CEOs, businesses must engage within themselves and with their stakeholders to define for themselves what is it they believe is the mission of business in society. They must enunciate that, they must try to practice that, and having enunciated it, then the public, whether it be civil society or others, need to hold them accountable. Now, on the specific issue of accountability, there are many ways, of course. You can boycott a company, you cannot buy their shares, you can do many things to hold a company accountable as you can hold a government accountable. So there are many ways it can be done. But I think the starting point is companies themselves and their stakeholders definitely should hold them accountable. And including business schools. Business schools, you'd be amazed, having headed a business school, SMU for 25 years, I begin to see how business schools shape the thinking of future business leaders. And when business schools in the US in particular have told business leaders, young business leaders doing their MBAs, that the sole mission of a business is to maximize shareholders' profits and TSR, total shareholder return, and so on, then you cannot blame the CEOs for doing nothing but basically maximizing quarterly profits. So the responsibility is within all of society, but very much among the leadership of companies themselves, that when they become leaders, they see that the leadership traits they have to have are different from what maybe their peers have so far been asking for them. So there must be internal transformation, is what I'm saying.
Do you want to add to that, Mr. Dinesh? Because there's something about positive discrimination as well, in terms of how do you make sure that businesses reflect society and that people of all backgrounds and races, religions, however you want to describe Singaporean society, that where there is competence, people are given a chance, and that internal mechanisms for keeping certain people out are minimized, if not totally eradicated.
I think, is that to me?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I do agree with Mr. Ho that it's important to start at the business schools and for there to be leadership. I do believe also that there's a need for a, somewhat differentiated approach depending on the type of company. And, there may be very small companies but as long as they can demonstrate a spirit of wanting to, integrate, diversify their composition, be inclusive, there must be some value that we can add to that. So I think that's one element of it that we should do. Of course, the bigger companies should possibly do more. Companies with boards, for example, this is a known issue of wanting to have, equal representation, not just of religions or races, but also gender. And that's something that we need to kind of figure where that balancing point is. And that is something that I think more can be done in order to shape that. Although we are in a relatively good place right now. But I do agree that businesses can do a bit more, particularly given the concerns that we have seen in terms of income inequality, as what Mr. Ho mentioned, people flaunting their wealth, and sometimes a bit of humility is very important to bring us a long way through.
Would you agree, Venerable, that people should not flaunt their wealth? Some people could argue, well, why have wealth if it's not for flaunting? But what would you say?
I'm not sure. So forgive me if sometimes I seem to don't answer your question.
That's okay.
Directly.
You are.
It's not something else. It's because I don't understand your question. So I think, how can I say, for the point that Mr. Dinesh and Mr. Ho made, I would like to share, from even religious leaders' side, we know that actually the business have done a lot to this world and to the society. And that's why even when I try to, better my English, I went for the nonviolence and development at SOAS University. But later on, I changed my mind because I thought that if I go there, I already work for the peace work, I already know expert. But the good thing of the expert is they have very deep knowledge, but sorry to say, a bit narrow. I want peace to be the matter of everyone, not just only a small group of peace builders. So I decided to go for CCMPR program, Corporate Communication, Marketing and Public Relations in Business School in Leeds. And I wrote the SOP that maybe the committee would wonder why a Buddhist monk wanted to apply for business school. And I shared the reason because I want to learn effective way of business side, but I also have mindfulness side and Buddhist culture to exchange. And I know that the money, 80% of the world driven by business. And I think right now we can see ESG sustainability report now transforming the way that Thai people doing business. Okay. And I think if we can do more responsibly to the how can I say, the structural violence in the business, that would be great.
We have a question here. Adversity may weaken us or make us stronger. Are there any examples of societies that have become even stronger because they overcame a difficult event? What can we learn from them? Is it possible to capitalize on adversity? Mr. Ho? Any one of you?
Maybe I'll start.
Yes, please.
With the most recent experience we've had, which was the global pandemic. And unlike many other countries in the world, Singapore turned out stronger after the pandemic than before the pandemic. It's kind of an odd mix. And the reason for that really was because, well, it was a very difficult time. If you recall, we couldn't gather in groups. Everyone was retreating back to homes, connected through computers and Zoom and so on. But it started with the overarching ability for us to place our limited resources in order to ensure that the population is protected. So there was a bit of a government play towards this. But more importantly, there was constant communication. There was a lot of ground-up initiatives, particularly among the religious groups, the self-help groups. They actually went out to support our people who may have had the illness and they may be at their homes, families needing support and so on. There was tremendous level of work being done, sometimes not very well kind of celebrated. But we do believe that there's a lot of, I was there throughout the entire pandemic. I was in the healthcare at that point in time, and I was able to see the sheer amount of work that, and these were not government related at all, and it happened organically from the churches, from the mosques, from the temples, sending food to people and so on and so forth. So I think that had made us a bit stronger because we started with the notion that we are to be bonded as one. But if we retreat to our respective enclaves and buckets of comfort, then we will not be able to help one another. And I think we have something that's good that's going inside here.
I think the question was more, have you come across another society from which you can learn that dealt with any kind of crisis, maybe better than Singapore?
Well, there are a couple of, you wouldn't find the kind of extreme blends that you get here as compared to anywhere else. And usually it's about different, they might be of the same stock, but there could be some differences in between. If I take a European example or an example from the Far East or anywhere else. But in the case of, if you ask me personally, I thought some of what's being done by the Scandinavians are something that's useful to understand, although they are kind of a monolithic type of society per se. Quite a couple of examples in the East particularly, just to make sure that we are able to bond and blend together. And quite frankly, within ASEAN, there is enough examples to suggest what else can be done. I was talking to the good minister from Cambodia who was telling me about how the majority Buddhists and Muslims were totally integrated in the way in which government was, not just government, but the way in which society is organized. And I think a lot's to be learned from our friends from ASEAN. So there are good examples within our region in itself.
Do you want to add to that? Either of you? No. You touched on something quite interesting, Mr. Ho, on class. And I come from the UK, where we are where we know class is everywhere, but people are still reluctant to talk about class as a dividing factor. How does class manifest itself in Singapore, or the division created by class?
Well, I think I use the term egalitarianism because I think you have to know that Singapore's background in terms of the PAP was basically a democratic socialist party in its beginnings, and espoused the same values of democratic socialism as you had in probably the Labour Party in those days, Harold Wilson's Labour Party and so on, and it has evolved its ideology over time. But whereas Singapore is a highly capitalist society, if you look at our economic structures, it's not that dissimilar from, say, Dubai or Hong Kong, but the social ethos in Singapore for the last 50 years has been very different from Dubai and Hong Kong. And in that sense, it's probably been more similar to what America was like 30, 40 years ago, where America was a highly capitalist society, income inequality was very apparent, but you had egalitarianism. You had people calling You had CEOs calling, or workers calling CEOs by their first name. You had cultural egalitarianism. That has completely disappeared in the US today. And I find, since I do travel to Dubai and Hong Kong, that the social ethos in Singapore has become closer to Dubai and Hong Kong. And I think that's highly worrying, because particularly in a capitalist society where income inequalities are clearly going to be quite apparent, then you have to work harder at the social level so that people's bank balances are more hidden, and we can at least socially be more together. And we do not flaunt wealth. We do now in Singapore. Clearly, when I was a younger person here and now today, the social values have changed. You would be embarrassed to flaunt wealth before. Today, people flaunt it as much as they do. Well, now they don't show it in Hong Kong. It's become the other way because China has overtaken Hong Kong. But we are becoming like Dubai. Dubai is a society where you totally flaunt your wealth. And Singapore, unfortunately, in terms of its social ethos, is becoming that way.
And what do you think has led to that? What do you think has created that?
Over time, honestly, partly what has led to it is probably the people who really push for egalitarianism are no longer there. You had a leadership team before. I'm talking about the first generation leaders that would be so imbued with egalitarianism because of their own democratic socialist backgrounds that that the whole of society had to buy in their values. And it was forced upon Singapore in the beginning because we were a colonial society like Hong Kong. Everybody wanted to flaunt their wealth. So Hong Kong and Singapore was very similar. But by the 70s or 80s, Singapore began to behave more like the Scandinavian countries. We have now departed the other way. We need to learn, in some ways, as Minister mentioned Scandinavia in a different context, we have to look probably at countries that have practiced and embraced egalitarianism quite successfully. And I would agree that I think the Scandinavian countries do have their own fractiousness, but probably doing relatively well. Japan is an example where, in fact, social cohesion is quite high because there is clearly a greater sense of egalitarianism. If you are wealthy, and there are wealthy people in Japan, it is not considered Japanese to flaunt your wealth. So we need to learn, just as we are learning how to observe how interfaith is important and how we learn about how other religions are important. We have to learn these things. We also have to learn from other societies how egalitarianism is actually promoted and become successful as a social value.
I agree. I would completely agree with that. But I wonder whether, in trying to think of policies where you hope that the more prosperous society becomes, the more cohesive it will become, maybe that experiment has actually failed. I don't mean completely collapsed, but the ideal that prosperity will lead to less division because people will be less resentful, maybe that's not human nature. Prosperity doesn't always lead to more cohesion because people who are wealthier find a way of disengaging with wider democracy. They have other means to make things work for them. And I wonder, on the back of what you're saying about Singapore becoming more like Dubai, that maybe that is an issue around capitalism itself, that prosperity does not necessarily, just because I'm wealthy and I have my needs, it doesn't make me more egalitarian, it actually takes me in the other direction. And I wonder whether Singapore is in danger of becoming like that.
Well, still left to be seen. Firstly, I recall...
It's not nice to ask a minister those questions.
It's the only person to ask this kind of question.
Well, if we talk about prosperity, and if you look at the way Singapore has developed over the years, there's always been a certain compact where businesses would contribute, for example. You flaunt your wealth in that way, for example, right? Contributing to educational institutions, healthcare institutions, and most of our healthcare and educational institutions have got great supporters from the business community. And we've always been a very closely connected system as that. I think the difference that has happened over the last couple of years is that we are getting, well, it's a very small place, so you can't quite retreat to the suburbs and, do whatever you need to. Everyone is next to each other, and personal spaces are also getting smaller. So when you have the way the government tries to break it in a certain way is to have public housing in areas that are, for example, seemingly high-end. And in that way, that integration is kind of expected to take place. But that in itself may not be sufficient. So we do need businesses to also step forward to see what else they could do. Not only, I'm very sure they still contribute to their causes that they believe in and so on, but it's about that grassroots level type connection that we need to see. And I think there will be models of that moving forward in the future. I can see some signs of it, and the more we can integrate that, I think we'll be in a better place.
Can I say one thing in support of egalitarianism in Singapore? And that is that, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but the Singapore educational system does not allow Singaporeans to go to private schools at secondary school level. And I'm a huge supporter of that. Because if you look at other societies from Thailand, Indonesia, and elsewhere, any society that allows private schools, I'm not even referring to universities, but more importantly, private schools at the sort of secondary school level, when you allow that kind of system, the class divisions, like in the UK, grow enormously. And what happens then is the public school system degenerates because the elites send all their kids to the private schools, and the elite people in government also don't get sufficient feedback because their children are all going to private schools. We have an excellent system here in the sense that all the government ministers, everybody, all the rich people who are in Singapore have to send their kids to the private schools. They still flaunt their wealth, unfortunately, but because they go to only the public school system, that is one strong mechanism for ensuring that the class divisions, although they are growing a little bit more, that it is contained. And I think that's an excellent thing that I hope we never change.
Yeah, I think the word contained is very useful there. Venerable, I want to ask you about the work that you do in terms of, do you think that the governments in this part of the world take interfaith, interreligious seriously as part of policy making, or is it just a kind of add-on to society as something that's really helpful and useful when there is conflict or when there is tension?
I think I never seen the ICCS or what the Singaporean government trying to do. I heard from Martin Miller several years ago that the Singaporean government tried to do a lot of things for the regional security, and the social division, it's one of their concern. So I think we need to pay attention on this. Otherwise, the price that we need to pay for our, don't care or don't prepare, it's too high. I think in Thailand, maybe we have some system that prevent us from learning the serious. We never take lesson learned seriously. And that's why in Thailand, policy regarding interfaith dialogue not taken seriously in the very effective way. Just only, in the southern border of Thailand, both Buddhists and Muslims hate the word multicultural. Why? Because when we talk about the dialogue, interfaith dialogue, multicultural, living in peace together, they just invite different religious leaders and different group of people to sit together and then have a photo for PR mainly. And that's not good in terms of attitude, right? Because when both religious leaders got that, more often they don't want to engage. And that kind of destroy our capital. So I think we need to do it. We need to learn. And one more thing that I can add from Mr. Ho, it's not just about class division in terms of religions as well, because in the southern border Thailand, we share a lot. Our Muslim brothers and sisters share that in the past they got a chance to learn in the same school with Buddhist brother and sister. So they don't feel, because like I talk about friendship, right? If we know someone, if we have relationship, at least no matter who talk about the other faith, but we know that our friends who are Muslim, who are Buddhist, who are Sikh, who are Hindu, they're great. They don't like that in the hate speech. That kind of their confirmation. But if we lack of that and we don't see this coming, eventually we're going to face more challenges.
We have about 3 minutes left, and I just want to ask each of you a question. Well, the same question. What do you believe are the blind spots in how current leaders are preparing for future disruptions to social cohesion? And what might it look like to plan for the resilience of the unknown?
Current leaders?
Yeah, what do you believe are the blind spots in how current leaders, whether I suppose leadership across society, is preparing for future disruptions to social cohesion? Yeah. The blind spots.
Well, I'm not too sure if they are really blind spots per se, but it's certainly a case where these are challenges that are existing. I think most of us see the challenge. The question would be, how do you react to it, and what else needs to be done in order to be able to, build a cohesive society against the challenges that you see. Some of these challenges were mentioned by the good Sultan yesterday, as well as the President, involving, for example, the pervasiveness of social media, messages that are coming across, particularly to our young, who may not quite be conditioned to accept some of these. And hence, the answer to that would really be to strengthen the way in which our educational systems are able to then allow people to maintain the criticality of thinking, but at the same time be able to discern against not helpful narratives, shall we say, that's coming in. And again, I refer to this purely from a societal perspective and not anything that's sinister. I do believe that a lot more needs to be done for, I do agree on the point on income inequality, and I think that will be pronounced, particularly in a place like Singapore, which is becoming a financial hub, attracting money from different parts of the world, and if that is not balanced sufficiently, and if society reacts in a certain way, then it will be an issue of haves versus have-nots, depending on what you define as have and what you define as have-nots. Increasingly, I notice that there are people who are burdening themselves, I'm referring to individuals here, about and creating much greater expectations at a very young age. And that is resulting in tremendous stress, which then translates into a sense of helplessness. Also at the individual level, and this is my own personal view, I do think we are starting to fray away from religion. And I do think that religion is an important lever, it doesn't matter what religion, to try to shape individuals, for them to be more resilient, and for them to be able to then determine what's around them, and to look at it from a very different lens as compared to just dollars and cents, success in career, and so on. So I think a lot more can be done to bring religion back to the core. But again, that's just my own personal views.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I think the blind spot that all leaders have, corporate as well as any leader, is to tend to think that the next crisis will have some similarity to the previous crisis, where in actual fact there will be absolutely no similarity at all. And therefore the blind spot is learning too much about how to resolve the next crisis, learning from the tools they used from the last crisis, when those tools, whatever they are, will probably be useless. And therefore the one thing they should learn from each crisis is to use each crisis, like they're saying, don't waste a crisis. And in my own company, I've had enough crises, but I try not to waste the crisis to the extent that each crisis is an opportunity to deepen the trust that the social contract that exists within a polity and its people, within a company itself. Every crisis allows you to build that resilience is actually nothing other than the trust that people build between leadership and the rest of the community, whether it be business or whether it be a country. And I think Singapore has learned from that every crisis, fortunately, that we've had actually deepens the bonds between the people themselves and the leadership. Whereas in other countries, every crisis begins to expose and deepen the fissures and the frictions within that society.
Thank you.
If I may say something like that, hopefully it's okay, because I heard a lot about crisis, right? But also KAICID, International Dialogue Center, also supports me along the way, and without their support, maybe I cannot do what I have been doing right now. So right now they open for their new cohort. So the more KAICID fellow would be less crises. So, but I don't talk about KAICID only. I talk about institutional collaboration, because just only individual monk cannot do much. Even one person can, switch the light on and, lighten the room. But in the blind spot, in the dark society, we need more systematic approach. So it means how we're going to make that happen. How we not just only end with just only hashtag ICCS 2025. How we're going to engage religious institutions, religious leaders, policy makers, and invite them to make together seriously but happily. And I think I'm going to end with the motto of I Behalf Thou Foundation: peace in one heart, start in one hands, our hands. But don't finish just only our hand. Put our heads together, let's think about it together, put our hearts together. We need sympathetic leadership and communication. And last one, put our heart together, our head together, and hands together. Thank you very much indeed.
Can we put our hands together? Thank you so much to my panelists. Thank you all. And I hope you enjoy a deserved cup of coffee. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Professor Siddiqui, for managing this very nice plenary session. We invite you to stand forward for a group photograph, if you will.
Ladies and gentlemen, another big round of applause for our speakers. And Ravi, having been bred and born here in Singapore, this I have to say, our education system is a big piece of how social cohesion is forged in Singapore. Of course, one could argue that it is institutionalized, but it works.
Thank you, panelists.
All.
Thank you. Invite you to make your way to your seats. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us take you through very quickly what will happen from now on. Immediately, in a few moments, we will invite you for a coffee break, which is right outside in the foyer. As usual, we request that you reserve the vegetarian as well as the kosher buffet lines for the guests with special dietary requirements.
And as we have yesterday, just some housekeeping announcements for where to go for your breakout sessions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, breakout 7 will be in this very ballroom after your coffee break, that is, of course. Breakout 8, please go to the Olivia room. Breakout, or rather showcase SC, please proceed to the Sophia room. Now, the sharing session 1, that will be in the Enterprise room. Sharing session 2, Mercury room. 3 will be in the Indiana room. And sharing session 4 in the Minto room. Now, we'd like to remind you that lunch will be back right here in this room.
Our program will begin at 2 p.m. That's after lunch with a fireside chat with our young community leaders, followed by a keynote address by Singapore's Minister for Law and Second Minister for Home Affairs.
Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, please do enjoy your coffee break right outside in the foyer, and we'll see you back here in a while.
Young community leaders at 2 p.m., ladies and gentlemen. The subject we're going to be talking about is cohesion forward. So we'd like to ensure that you come in right here on time. We'll see you at 2 p.m. sharp. Thank you.